Hey everybody, welcome to Members Only, a show centered around CMAC members and the projects they produce. My name is Johnny Pacina, and I'll be your host for today. In this edition of Members Only, we'll be talking to the producers of two shows, Your Pro Voice and There's an Oil for That. Up first is Yvone Schwemmer, producer of Your Pro Voice, a show that focuses on the art of presentation through discussion, tips, and tools. But before we talk to Yvone, let's take a look at a clip that gives us an inside look as to what Your Pro Voice is all about.
Abel Gonzalez is a young man who has conquered some pretty dire circumstances.
I'm over here doing some special training for the show. It gets you strong and healthy without you even really knowing it.
When I first met you last summer, I really appreciate your skill and your marks to the commitment that you have right at the get-go of this process to getting into the American Ninja Warrior scene.
I mean, being a speaker and people wanting to hear my story is just basically me telling my story as
Our guests today have some very specialized communication skills. With more than 28 years at KC24, Faith Sidlow left her life as an anchor with that station in July 2013. Mike Scott departed his anchor spot at CBS 47 just shy of his 30-year anniversary in the summer of 2013. He's always smiling and laughing. And the most recent venture on a different path from where he's been after over 50 years in broadcasting. Last year, Bud Elliott left behind 23 annuals and 24.
Well, that was quite a highlight video of Your Pro Voice, and here we have Yvone, the producer of Your Pro Voice.
Hi, John.
And hi, Yvone, how are you?
All right, thanks.
Great, thank you for taking the time to be here and,
Sure.
and be interviewed and to talk about your show a little bit today. So watching that video and looking through it a little bit, looks like there was a lot of aspects to it, a lot of moving parts, and I was kind of there in that process when you were pre-producing it. But tell me a little bit about the show and how you came up with the idea to create it.
Actually conceived of the idea when I began CMAC, which was just a little over 2 years ago. But it was free-floating. It was nebulous, and it needed some sort of a container. And it actually took a couple years for that to happen. I was out there filming a lot of stuff in the interim, but I didn't really have any way for it to mesh. So the show solidified in my mind and became Your Pro Voice. What I wanted to do was provide resources, discussion, tips about doing a better job of presenting. And there's a lot of great presenters out there, but I think we all can improve. It's a lifetime process if you want to be out there doing presentations. So just serendipity, divine providence came that brought some great resources and guests that I felt would make a good launch for my show. So as a result, I ended up doing two kind of back-to-back.
Mm-hmm. And it seemed like you really found your stride there too with that initial creation and idea, brainstorming. You really came down to ground level and said, okay, this is what I want to do, and you made it happen. So that's great. And talking about your guests too, you had a few media professionals on your show, correct? And some of them were local broadcasters, recently retired, some of them still working too, even as professors. Tell us a little bit about the broadcasters you interviewed.
Well, that came together really here. Faith Sidlow was a guest at one of the member mixers doing a lecture here, and I was on Mike Scott's Central Valley Talk Show as one of his guests, and just thought I could reach out and bring some of this great talent that collectively they've been in the business for over 100 years, and so how could you not have a lot to learn from all that? And they were so gracious, and they were so impressed with the studio. They really
great.
thought very well of it. So it was fun. It was a fun way to start.
Yeah, it's a great resource to get started and to get a show created. And I consider your show as programming coordinator here, scheduling the show and watching it myself too, like a bonus show. And the reason why I say that is because not only are you presenting your ideas of tips on how to be a good broadcaster, presenter, and speaker, but you're bringing in, like we just said, those people that have had the experience. So you're kind of passing on the knowledge you know already, at the same time making quality content, which is what we're all about. So it's great to see some people come through and students locally, and so yeah, we really appreciate your content, and we hope to see more episodes too. I'm looking forward to some more as well.
Yeah, they've got some in the works.
Great. Well, that's good to know. So, I guess what was your initial inspiration? What inspired you to get this going?
Well, coming to CMAC my objective was to open up the creative side. I come from a corporate world, and not that a corporate world's not creative, but it's, you know, it's sort of a different kettle of fish.
A little restricting, right? So here and there, maybe.
It's just wanting to open up and connect with more creatives. And I have a background. I've been a Toastmaster for many years, gone through I'm a distinguished Toastmaster, a lot of presentations, and I thought, well, what can I do with what I've learned and continue to evolve my own skill set? So it's about a gift for the audience, I hope, a tool for the audience, and then it keeps me refreshed on what makes for a good presentation.
Most definitely.
Good presenter.
Yeah, and doing the show, I'm sure you're also emphasizing the skills you've learned. It's just like, you know, for people that are experts in any field, they, you know, I'm sure they all can agree that if you emphasize the basics and always you're talking about the basics and practicing the basics, it's important because you don't want to lose that, right?
Sure.
So some of the skills that you're doing, you know, you're continually emphasizing it for yourself and, like you said, passing it on as a gift. So that's some great stuff there. So with that in mind, though, I'm sure you've experienced some challenges producing your show, and those that are watching and that may want to start producing their own show, they probably want to know what are some obstacles they're going to be facing. So for you personally, what are some of the challenges you faced for the show?
Well, I think that 2 years, you know, the curriculum here has evolved a lot, and you know, some of the efforts and the projects in the new Studio 3 session, I think, will go a long way in helping people get off the dime much earlier. I'm happy with my process, but just the time involved and not having really a comprehension of all the pieces and, you know, wearing all the hats. In my case, I was pretty much self-produced, you know, and directing, and so there's much more to this than I realized.
And of course, well, hopefully staff has been helpful for you as well,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. And
yes.
you know what, and boy, if I could, a word of experience, and that is get involved in other people's projects as well, because I did that early on, and I was so fortunate to have some really great people helping me out on my projects.
Yeah, and that goes to what we say in our PowerPoint presentations too, is you kind of learn by osmosis, really. You get involved, you kind of put yourself in the environment even. Some of our new members that come in, you know, they're not technically, right off the bat, they're not permitted to use the studio but until they take the class, but they at least just want to come and watch shows like this, or watch some productions going on. They just start listening and learning. So, and that's great. We can be of service to you, and that's how you learned.
Yeah, a great example is I worked on August's show, Aqualava, and did an interview, a Skype-based interview with one of his talent. And so that I used the Skype experience in my first show with Abel Gonzalez, who's an American Ninja Warrior.
Right, great show, by the way.
Thank you.
Love
I love that.
Yeah, exactly, and I was going to mention that to you. The Skype interview, you saw something put in place, and you had the ability to use Skype and use it a part of your studio show. And if you recall back to the highlight video, you were on the bottom corner of the screen, and he was there, and we did switching there between the two. So it was great that you were able to see that capability, and it's really amazing all the tools we have for our members to use that way.
It really is, and that's a lesson for me because it helps. There are no boundaries for doing this show. We can do it in the studio. We can do it with somebody any place in the world at any time of, time zones aren't really an issue, and we can do something out in the field. So it's, there really are no limits.
Yeah, when meshing the two, it's always fun to see a variety of programming that comes in. Not only is it a show like this, but as we just showed the highlight videos, we have graphics. We put all these elements together to create the show, and we teach you how to do that here at CMAC. So we're really fortunate to be able to do that. And you kind of sort of touched on it a little bit, I think, but what advice would you give to anyone who is thinking about creating their own show?
Really try to get in the eyes and the ears of your audience, know who your audience is, and work to keep their interest, because having just an interview or just a talent here by itself could perhaps get boring. I hope we're not boring.
No.
But just to have the elements that are going to hold interest. So having those B shots, having cutaway shots and video that support your story, because you're telling a story, is really critical. And it took me a while to think of that. I wasn't necessarily thinking in advance and thought, God, we need something. And so I think it'll go faster the next time.
And sometimes it's not until you actually have done the production you said, you know what, maybe I can plug in this here and that there, and it really adds more to the story. And the ability to do that, you can also add graphics. We do lower thirds. We probably have a few popping up here and there with our names on them. You know, you have those ability to do that, and you've used that.
Is there time? Can I add one thing in here?
Sure,
because it really is critical. My head, I think, in kind of in this, I don't know, jellyfish style, just sort of loose and open. But I needed some structure, and that's what I really struggled with. So you and Caesar and Lisa were really instrumental in helping me get a structure to my files, able to find them quickly, and able to pull those together. So that would be a huge word of advice that I would have is get that structure in place. Even if you have stuff that you do today and you don't see a use for it, hold on to it, and you'll find a use for it in the future.
And may resurface again, right?
Yeah.
You have an idea, and sometimes you don't have to start big. You start with a few episodes, and then you go bigger and bigger, longer even if you want, in terms of duration of the show. So speaking of that, though, looking into the future, what's next for your Pro Voice?
Well, the next show that we have queued up, we have an anchor talent, Lisa Cesaris with Angels of Grace, who is an adoption agency here in town, is agreed to do an upcoming show. And so I'm in the process of gathering a couple of people around her that will fill out the picture, and I think that will make a good show.
That's
and
great.
Again, I always have to remember it's not just the message of that entity, but how do they impact presentation? How do they prepare for presentation and get their word out? So that's got to be part of my show. Right,
and one of the things we like to kind of tell our members too is that we're really filling in the gaps that a lot of, and you know, nothing against local news networks or anything. I even worked at one. I loved working there. You learn so much, but it would be impossible for them to do each and every story, things that are happening in town, Fresno, Clovis area. There's just so much out there. And our members find things like, you know, was it the Angels of Grace?
Angels of Grace,
Right, something like that. I didn't know about it until you mentioned it. And when you put it in a video format, you know, we end up finding out about it, and it's sort of a promotion too, and it really brings everyone together and say, hey, did you watch that program? Things like that. So, Yvonne, we're out of time, but I really appreciate your time coming again here. So hopefully we can do something like this again. I would love to do that.
Thank you.
So, all right, so we'll be right back, and we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll have some special guests here, Mary and Amanda Bell, the producing team behind There's an Oil for That. See you soon. Welcome back. Joining me now is Mary and her daughter, Amanda Bell, here to talk about their show, There's an Oil for That, a show that educates people about natural, preventative health options. But before we bring them out, let's take a look at a short clip from There's an Oil for That.
Hello and welcome to our show. My name is Mary. I'm the owner of Permission, where you have permission to be happy, healthy, and pampered.
Hello, my name is Amanda, and I'm here to learn about essential oils.
At Permission, I often use therapeutic grade essential oils. My purpose of making these videos is to help you to learn about them too, and to know about them and know about options that are available to you.
Can you please teach me about thieves? I'd love to hear about thieves.
Thieves is a wonderful oil, and it's a preventative health oil. So we use Thieves so that we don't get sick. It's not an oil that you use after you get sick. You use it so that you don't ever get sick. Does that make sense?
Yes. Can you swallow it?
Because it's a therapeutic grade essential oil and because it's a supplement. If the bottle says both, then you can swallow it.
All right, welcome back. That was a great highlight video there. As you can see, I'm sure it's a familiar face from the show there. Amanda and Mary Bell, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I got a comment on your sweater for the show. That is so cool.
You like that?
Yeah. How did you go about that? Did you just go to print online somewhere? And
there's a website called oilswag.com, and you can order. There's an oil for that. Purses, jewelry, t-shirts, sweatshirts. It's really cool.
Oh, nice. I like the text and how it looks, and it's really neat. So thank you again for being here. And I want to mention too that your show itself is a really unique situation with how you go about the broadcasting for it and how you've done the pre-production. You actually have a business, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So, and you're able to utilize CMAC in such a way, just to mention too, though, we are a nonprofit, but we still can utilize the facility to at least showcase your knowledge and how you've gone about to create your show and everything you know about oils. So tell us a little bit about the show and how you were able to produce it and come up with it.
Well, the show, for me personally, I like to teach people about their options so that you're not thinking that prescription drugs and surgery in Western medicine is your only option when you need health issues. So there are a lot of different options. So that was kind of the driving force behind coming up with the show. And with CMAC, you can do pretty much any show that you want, any type of show, a talk show, an educational show, a just for fun show. I've also seen some people do cartoon shows.
Yes.
So CMAC does give you that freedom to do that. So at the same time, you can do what interests you with it out being at it's not a commercial thing. It's not oh wait, there's more. You can buy these and get knives. So you really can't sell and promote a particular item, but CMAC does promote the growth of my business in a big way.
That's great, and it also in turn kind of becomes informative too. You're showing knowledge that maybe someone just tuning in, going to channel surfing says, hey, and then it might inspire them to even just want to look into their health and say, I figured I'd just go to the vitamin store and go to GNC or get something there, but they find that there's another option, and you've provided that option, and you provide the education for it too. So that's great.
And the education in an informative, the clip that you saw today was one that we did about thieves oils, and it was more of an educational, get down to business type format. But then we also did another one that was a fun, comical one about oils we did it on the green screen, and we kind of spoofed the Hunger Games movie.
Yes, I love that one.
It's called Oils Revolution. And so it was also informative and educational, but in more of a sarcastic kind of way. So you can do both ways. At CMAC, you can do all of that.
Yeah, you can be creative and approach it in any way possible that you feel like your viewers are going to be most, interested in and want to stay on the station and keep watching. And it seems like, and now I want to mention though too, because we were talking about this earlier, you said that you feel like you're a celebrity now.
I'm a celebrity now, thanks to CMAC.
Yes, thanks to CMAC. You can be a celebrity here at CMAC. Tell us a little bit why you said that, basically.
Well, I say that tongue in cheek, but last night I got a phone call, and this man called me and he said, I wanted to ask you about this oil. I was just watching CMAC just now on the TV, and I saw you talking about this oil. And so he picked up the phone from my show and called me on this, you know, as soon as the show got over, he picked up the phone and called me, and then he got all nervous and said, I didn't think that you personally would answer the phone. I just saw you on the TV, and you're like a celebrity, and you actually answer the phone, and I'm talking to you. So now, if you want my autograph after the show, you can.
Yeah, someone have a pen on crew. Yeah, thanks.
But CMAC is not that serious. Don't get the idea. I mean, CMAC is definitely a learning environment, and it's definitely a place where you can have that freedom to make mistakes and learn as you go. So.
And all joking aside, you're right. That's how, people will recognize you. I've heard from countless members that say, hey, you're that person from that show, or they'll even know the title of the show, and they say they tune in to watch it every, Monday at 7 or something like that. So, it's such you get so much more when you're producing here. You get exposure on local cable television. You get it promoted on our website, YouTube, if you'd like as well, and you have the ability to kind of expand your ideas and what you're doing with your business. So that's great.
And I could also use that on my personal website and on Facebook or all those other things. People.
Yeah. After we broadcast it once here on the networks, we can you can do whatever you want with your video essentially. So that's always an exciting thing to allow for our members. So. This is your first time you've ever dealt with video, right? I mean, have you done any video productions before, or is this pretty much the same, the first start in major videos?
Amanda's done video shows before, but I was always kind of still.
But you weren't involved with it as much?
No.
What types of things did you do, Amanda?
Julius Caesar.
Julius Caesar, okay. So some of the stuff you learned from Oils, you made a show for yourself, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. And we've even were able to use some talent from CMAC as well. Our members, Gary, Paul, and
my dad.
And your dad, that's right, yes. So it's great. See, people bring in their families too. They utilize them in ways like Amanda sometimes is the host, right, for the show. And then it really becomes not only a collaborative environment for people that are just meeting others, but you end up it becomes almost a family experience at times. So that's great that we can do that.
And it's a great way to learn like every position, because sometimes for my shows, some of my shows she's talent with me in front of the camera. Sometimes she's operating the cameras for me, and I'm the only one on camera. Sometimes she's in the control room. So having that flexibility and having that talent right in the car with me is quite convenient.
Everyone's wearing different hats on production,
Exactly.
right? That's great, and they're getting a lot of experience in all the areas, and then eventually you can probably volunteer if you so choose on someone else's show and say, hey, I can operate camera, I can run the audio board, I can use all sorts of things. Talking about the technical aspect of things though, what are some of the challenges you face?
I think for me the biggest challenge is this place is so left brain. And what are some of the biggest challenges? I think finding our own groove through all of the help that everybody here at CMAC is so helpful. Everybody's so willing to teach us and spend time with us and show us ways to do things, and then you kind of have to sift through it and find your own way. And I think also one of the things that was a challenge was to learn your audience. I was under the impression when we started making shows that keep it under 3 minutes. Nobody's going to watch more than 3 minutes. And I'm not finding that to be true. Because when you put after their show was on CMAC channel, then I can put it on my YouTube channel, and YouTube gives you all those statistics about who's watching, how long they're watching, what country they live in, all that stuff. And I'm not finding that to be true. So adjusting your shows to that feedback that you get later.
You can adapt to that essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the staff is always willing. If I come back to the staff and say, I know I took all the classes, but the statistics are showing I need to do something different, the staff is there to help me and will always, help me work through that.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that too, because you look on YouTube and some people that I know, even some of the people I'm friends with, and they'll say, oh, this video is over 5 minutes long. It better be worth it. And then they say, oh, I wasted 5 minutes. And a lot of people have that attitude, like if it's any longer than a certain amount, they don't want to watch it. But yeah, you're exactly right. If it's informative, if it's interesting, engaging, then people will watch it, and
Or
especially
listen.
Or listen, exactly.
Right, because a lot of times people turn on a YouTube channel and then they're visually doing something else, but they're listening. So yeah.
And it's
they will.
definitely, yeah, and you start developing sort of that, I guess, a fan base, like you're a fan that called
Yes,
you.
yes.
So yeah, so if you make a program at CMAC, there is a high chance you'll get a strong viewership, you get a lot of people watching, and we can look at those statistics of who watch through our YouTube channel as well, if you'd like us to post it, or if, like for your case, you post it to your own page after broadcasts, right?
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
So, and let's talk a little bit too, because we have a few minutes here, about how your program's utilized in terms of the schedule. So the longest episode I believe I received from you is about 15 minutes or so, and talk about a little bit how we utilize it as fillers.
Well, for me, I was intimidated by the whole get your own show idea because I was concerned that meant that I had to commit to being here at the studio at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, rain or shine,
Right.
and that I was stuck and confined to that. And then after I talked to you about it, I thought, no, I don't want to make my own show because I don't want that structure. I want to just kind of be able to do and adapt and fit it into my schedule. And what I found is that I can come in. One day we came in and we filmed 19 shows in one studio.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yes, one
Quite an
marathon day.
achievement, yeah.
Took me forever to edit it all afterwards, but
Yeah.
we were in the studio for like 3 hours and ended up
Understood.
with 19 shows. And then they're all 19 shows are all different lengths. And I just dump it in Johnny's lap. And
Thank you.
Yes. And then he fits it in however you fit it in, however it works into the CMAC schedule. But I don't have to be so
That's true.
married to the
Yeah.
clock.
So yeah, that's
And
exactly.
that works for me very well, to be able to say what I need to say in a way
Amen.
that's engaging without having to be so stuck to the clock that I'm filling my show with
Right.
stuff that isn't of interest.
So I'm glad we're able to be of service to you, and
Yes.
we can. It's a win-win situation. So we're about out of time here.
Okay.
Again, Amanda, Mary, thank you for joining us today on the show, and that'll wrap it up for today for today's edition of Members Only. If you'd like to see more about Your Pro Voice or There's an Oil for That, you can look for them on CMAX channels, Comcast 93, as well as AT&T Channel 99. If you don't have Comcast or AT&T Uverse, you can go to www.cmac.tv to watch the live streaming of the channels through CMAC's website. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time.